What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. I've been chipping away at working on my scouting breakdown videos, so those will be coming soon, starting with the wide receiver class, but I know I haven't uploaded a ton. I wanted to drop off my first 7-round mock draft, though, for the New York Jets. And I love this exercise. One of the best parts is looking at all of these day 3 guys that I'm extremely unfamiliar with and digging into it from a high level and seeing guys that intrigue me right out the gate versus guys that maybe you need to dig a little bit for. But also, I talked about the free agency strategy and how that has heavy implications on the draft, where it feels like we need starters or, I guess, guys that we're confident being key role players right out of the gate throughout the entirety of our draft class, day 1 to day 3. And that's not to say that that can't be accomplished. It's definitely highly unlikely, but I think there are the makings here, especially based on the positions of strength here, in addition to the areas that the Jets need help in, to be able to turn that to our advantage. So the only thing you really need to know before we dive into things here is this isn't a trade situation. And I may talk about 1 or 2 like honorable mentions here. I did run this simulation 3 different times just to see if there was a change of thinking based on who may be available, etc. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it here. So in the first round, 7th overall, Mason Graham out of Michigan was available all 3 times. I was floored, but I was obviously very excited as well. I've been legit asking for Quentin Williams to have a partner in crime that he could grow with, that would be not too far from his level. And ideally, Quentin Williams is going to be one of those guys that you look at as the ceiling for many of the future players coming out. Mason Graham is going to be right up our alley. Not only does he have a significantly high floor, the concerns about him are really at a minimal. There's a reason why many are comfortable calling him one of the blue chip players, maybe one of the only 3 or 4 guys in this draft class that can make a true difference coming out of the gate. And he would be walking into one of arguably the best situations based on how the New York Jets have invested in their line, the job Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich, Aaron Whitecotton have done in developing the guys who will still be sticking around here. Mason Graham, really the only knock on him is he was listed in his, I want to say the high 310s, maybe low 320s at Michigan. Seems like he was realistically playing where we see him now, high 280s, low 290s. It's honestly a weight that I feel really, really good about if you talk about a guy that has a high floor, because he becomes that perfect tweener 3-4, 4-3 DN DT type guy. You can kick him on the inside, kick him on the outside. He can play multiple fronts. All schemes are open for him. Absolutely love him, right? The cons do not outweigh the pros in any shape, form, or fashion with Mason Graham here. You know he's been coached up extremely well, being able to be a part of championship teams, obviously a leader on that defense, and he's worked with Kenneth Grant amongst plenty of other guys. So he's not necessarily needed to be the superstar guy, but he also will probably feel comfortable adjusting into being around other elite players. So definitely love him. He can go out there and work the double teams. He can run, guys into the ground in the backfield, shoot the gaps. He can hold up decently well against some of the double teams. And then, of course, the pass rushing chops is going to be the draw with Mason Graham here. Overall, I just think he has that full kind of championship pedigree to him, and a guy that's going to be really hard to imagine that you can miss on. So with one of the underrated conversation topics being that first pick for a GM/head coach is kind of your face of the franchise, or at least the face of the current era for you, right? You want a guy that checks off as many boxes as possible: personality, on-field play, ability to handle the media, ability to go out there and be a great teammate, as well as be able to go out there and potentially change the culture. And I think Mason Graham can definitely do a ton of those things in spades. So was really happy to be able to start things off with him here. I will say, quick asterisk, I am a huge proponent of still trading back. Even potentially if Mason Graham is here, it'll be dependent on the trade package, of course. But this couldn't be a better way to start off this regime. In the second round, 43rd overall, trench play is going to be one of the themes here for me, because I feel like if you have elite trench play, you can kind of get away with having marginal or, average, maybe one above average player or two on the outsides. I'm thinking wide receiver, I'm thinking cornerbacks, etc. You could really make it work. Cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers, same thing with wide receivers, tight ends. All of these guys benefit from great trench play. And so it even allows you, if you don't necessarily want to play this way, right, to be able to control clock, manipulate time of possession, all those kind of things. Arianti Ursary is a guy that could be drawn up in a lab. 6'6 plus, 315 plus-ish pounds. Freakish arm length, right? Freakish athleticism for his size. Coming out of Minnesota, if you looked earlier in the offseason, he was generally regarded as a top 3 player. So this is a little bit of a fall for grace from him. But realistically speaking here, you're talking about walking away with essentially a surefire starter, in my opinion anyways. I haven't gone through a profile with him just yet, but from what I was able to dig into, very comfortable with adding him to this offense. He's essentially the equivalent, in my opinion, to like a Olu Fashanu for the right side. Arianti Ursary has essentially built up a lot of his experience on the left, but many people feel like the flip to the right side makes a ton more sense, not only for his athletic ability, but also taking a look at this New York Jets line, right? I think his ability to do all of the things at a level that you feel really, really comfortable with is going to be the big draw. The big takeaway with Ursary here, he's strong in the run game. He can be strong in pass protection. The athleticism allows him to do ridiculous things when it comes to him getting beat and his ability to recover. When it comes to be able to do ridiculous things at his size, like sink his hips, create that strong anchor. When it comes to being able to hit that second level or even decimate guys up front in man-to-man situations, you can feel comfortable enough with having him out there on an island for various portions of time. And when you start talking about the combo blocks and being able to pair him up with a tight end that's great in blocking, or even just AVT in this situation, you start to, sweet chin music starts to happen, right? Ursary is a guy that, come draft day, if he is the next pick for us, I'm thrilled. There's definitely a few other guys that I'd be really, really happy with too, but I think the athleticism that stands out with Ursary is going to be the draw, especially when I consider the evolution of the offensive line. I don't know if this will be the exact match that I'm thinking, but it's not ridiculous to say that if things click for him and work out, he could be a Lane Johnson type individual for the New York Jets. So with that said, I think that rounds out the trenches specifically on the offensive line for us. And then at that point, you can focus on building for the future and key depth, right? A great swing tackle, great swing guard that you feel like you can develop into a starter moving on from this. Now in the third round, one of the things that I think may be a focal point is this regime focusing on offense. And that's a theme that I'm going to continue here. We know that we still have some holes at wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, tight end. We still want to look for a starter, or at least create a situation where you have maybe 2 high-level tight end 2 types, right? And you can maybe get away and work around with that. Wide receiver is going to be the pick here. Isaiah Bond out of Texas. This is a guy that I think will be a much better pro based on the numbers in the NFL than what he was as a collegiate player. You can make the argument that his quarterback, Quinn Ewers, this is a guy that could have been top tier. He could have been one of the worst guys coming out with the pressure of Arch Manning behind him. And then, of course, hidden injury that we found out about during Combine. And there's, a number of other excuses you can come up with. But ultimately, for whatever reason, Quinn Ewers just couldn't connect with Isaiah Bond deep, even though you can clearly see that Isaiah Bond has elite speed, for one. 2, He's a guy that was consistently open, and I think when you look at his ability to not only track the ball deep, his ability to get deep, and a lot of that happens with him being able to snap some of those routes off at the top of his routes and create that additional separation, or just being able to give his quarterback a opportunity to only place it where either he can get it or the ball is going to hit turf, right? So Isaiah Bond, I feel like there's a lot that you can do with him, not only from being able to play him out as a slot and utilize his speed that way with not having to worry about press coverage, but you can also put him on the outside when you want to try to hit some of those 9 or go route balls. And, 2-3 times a game, he's a guy that may be a huge difference maker for you. And just from the speed element as well, that we know that Aaron Glenn and our new OC Engstrand is accustomed to, he's going to fit that model of somebody that at least will be someone that they seriously consider at some point in the draft that isn't just a one-trick pony. I think there's a little bit more to him from a route running standpoint. Definitely still a lot to work with in his game, but this feels like kind of a picture-made guy if you want to imagine the New York Jets kind of recreating the Dolphins and their need for speed within our offense based on what we're doing. In the 4th round, 110th overall, the next offensive player we take, tight end Elijah Arroyo. Now, when I look at this, he truly is one of the best available. I would have loved to find a way to get Mason Taylor, but I don't see him dropping to the 4th. Elijah Arroyo is more of a project than I would imagine many people think. And again, a lot of these guys I haven't done profiles on or anything like that, but we know he's a speed demon. This is a freaky tight end when it comes to being able to go out there and essentially play like a large wide receiver that has, sub 4.5 speed on him, right? Not only is he going to bring the red zone ability for you, he's going to bring a speed dimension. This is a guy that has the physical build to be able to go out there and contribute in a blocking game. And I don't think it'll be a calling card for him in the NFL. I do think he can work his way up into maybe becoming one of the better blockers. A lot of it is mentality, and then you can work on technique and fundamentals. And I think he's going to bring everything that you can look for in day one while being a huge matchup nightmare. I mean, this is truly one of those tight ends where the speed is going to be game breaking when you talk about linebackers or safeties needing to cover this guy. And if he doesn't even end up winning the tight end 1 spot, let's say somehow Stone Smart beats him, somehow we make a veteran acquisition here, to think that somebody's LB3 or somebody's slot cornerback or third safety in rotation, joker role type, is going to have to try to come down and figure out a way to cover him. Huge advantage for the Jets in being able to game plan that. Seeing him in 12 personnel would be a thing of beauty, in my opinion here. And he's still young enough to where he doesn't know all of the inner workings of the tight end position. So from a mentality standpoint, when you get him, tied up with Jeff Blasco, and you get him acclimated into this offense, and part of this offensive line unit where we have Steve Hyden in there that has also coached tight ends, and he can maybe bring out a little bit more of the blocking ability a little bit quicker than what the general player walking in the door may be used to. I could get down with this pick every day of the week. Now in round 5, 145th overall, Tyler Shough. This is in my opinion, I want to take a dart throw at quarterback, right? I think there's a few guys that you could take a look at and make a reasonable argument for, especially when you talk about utilizing a day 3 pick. Tyler Shough is intriguing because his stock, high level wise, just seems like it continues to rise, right? I've heard things as crazy as he could be the 3rd quarterback off the board, and we're talking end of round 1, maybe high beginning of round 2. And then, of course, I've just heard people refer to him as a huge value addition on day 3, but it looks likely like he may end up on day 2 at some point in time, and that would be a little bit too rich for my blood. But with Tyler, he's going to bring all of the physical components you can look for. The size. It's not necessarily bringing the durability, but that arm is pretty crazy. Not top tier in the league, but this is a guy that'll be able to put some balls through the wind and just slice through like butter. And then you also think about the experience, his come up, multiple systems, being in a pro style offense, being responsible for making the protection calls, being responsible for making the adjustments and calling audibles as he sees fit. This is really kind of your throwback quarterback development player, as a guy that could step onto the field day one and he'll probably win the backup job comfortably, right? When you talk about him competing with somebody like Jordan Travis, but he also has that ceiling that you look at where you say, there's enough mobility here. We love the toughness, right? His ability to come back from a lot of these injuries. And from what I understand in the combine, not only have these injuries been behind him for at least a year or two, but the type of, I guess, fixes for those surgeries that were in place, which was installing metal plates and then just allowing the time for him to heal. He's overcome a lot mentally. Obviously, he can adapt pretty quickly and come back in a positive fashion. But this is a guy that I think when you look at him on day one, you have a easier development curve for him and allowing him that year one time with seeing what Justin Fields becomes. Year two is not crazy to think that he can compete with one of these guys from the 2026 draft class that people will be, drooling over. So I'm pretty excited about what we could mold out of a guy like Tyler here, and I think it's worth the dart throw. In the 5th round as well, 162nd overall, we have our next defensive player, safety Malachi Moore. This is a ball hawk. If I'm looking at the safety positions, I'm looking at this from a high ceiling perspective. I want my enforcer, or I want somebody that is going to be a significant ball hawk. And he has 7 interceptions as a deep center safety in 2024. So he doesn't bring the size that I would necessarily covet, but he's going to be able to go out there, be a solid tackler. He's a guy who has tremendous vision, and really I look at this as a pretty significant steal for the New York Jets. The athleticism may be a bit of a concern just because he doesn't have freakish speed or even freakish, agility or acceleration. But the intelligence, the football IQ, and being able to put himself in position will make him a player that over the years, there's not going to be fluctuations in this year he had, 4 or 5 interceptions. This year he has 0. He seems like a guy that'll comfortably come up with the ball more often than not. And that is something that's going to be an emphasis in Aaron Glenn's defense as well in his secondary, where he's going to be looking to have these guys roam the field, make the plays, play the smart football. And I think Malachi Moore fits in really, really well. Now, in the 6th round, 186 overall, guard Connor Colby is going to be the pickup here. This is a guy that I feel like is the perfect swing guard / potentially swing tackle for the New York Jets on day 3. He's coming in at a pretty great size. Not only that, he's racked up a ton of experience at left guard, and right tackle. And it's not versatility just for the sake of having versatility. He's kind of played that AVT light role at each of these positions where it's an acceptable level of play. It's not us saying we were down to, either him or our 4th or 5th best offensive lineman. Let's just throw him in and see what happens. This is a guy that was arguably able to go out there and look like a solid starter for them. So on day 3, looking at a guy that shouldn't have to hit the field right away, and then looking at what you want to do in terms of having that replacement for a guy like Schweitzer, and then of course maybe a future plug-in for somebody like John Simpson. I think this would be a very smart addition for the Jets here. And then lastly, our pick in the 6th round, number 207. I feel like defensive line is probably going to get hit again, but this time we're looking on the exterior with edge Tyler Batty. And this is a guy that's going to be a fierce run defender. And I think with the struggles that we've had in the run game for really the entirety of Robert Saleh's career, but you can also point to numerous times throughout the course of the last 3 or 4 regimes, we haven't been a team that has really prioritized locking down the run. And there's a reason for that. Obviously, passing is at a higher emphasis than ever in the NFL, but truly, I think if you can make a team one-dimensional, it's very easy to game plan, put your defense in situations based on the talent that you have to where you can either limit somebody or you can really start to force those situations where when they don't have that franchise guy or they're down and they need to press, or even they feel the need that they can beat you, right, and they have something to prove. You put yourself in a much better predicament here. Tyler Batty's a guy that has enough athleticism to where he still has significant upside as a pass rusher for you as well. But right out of the gate, this is a guy that can be your Michael Clemens replacement. This is your guy that can maybe go out there and I'm trying to think who's the next best. Coverage isn't going to be in his calling card, right? He's not a guy that you're going to want to see being able to drop off and roam around and things, but he has that athleticism to him to be able to do some of those things. Ultimately, if you look at Tyler, I think right out the gate, you say he's a guy that can lock up the edge for you, and he's a guy that can really attack that C gap, that outside shoulder of the tackle, or get in between the tackle and guard, and he can still have some success. Maybe he gets you 2 or 3 sacks on the year, and maybe that's just his consistent trend without ever fully breaking up. But this is a dice throw on a guy that clearly has a role right out of the gate. I would expect for him to excel in that role right out of the gate, and then anything he offers from a pass rush standpoint would just be a huge plus. But he offers some sneaky ability as a disruptor, if anything else. So for those guys that never really get the fame and the glory because they don't have the sack numbers, but they're out there collapsing pockets and making sure quarterbacks are on the run pretty consistently, Tyler Batty is a guy that I really, really like. So that is my 7-round mock draft. Let me know what you guys think. Are there any names here that you've been surprised about? Are there any names that you would have expected me to take in any of these rounds? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.